I know that education is a topic of discussion a lot lately, and I just wanted to share my journey through education and talk about the influence that teachers have on a person's life, mine in particularly. Growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, I come from areas that are deemed distressed, and so I have come from humble beginnings. Just to be honest with you, I had teachers who told me that I was stupid and that I was a fool and I looked silly for the way I dressed or the way that I walked, the way that I talked, and just told me repeatedly that no matter what, they're going to get their check on the first and the 15th. Growing up, you just knew that because it was repeated to you often, and I just recall having that experience. But although I had teachers like that, I do want to shine light on the teachers that have had a great impact on my life. Shout out to Mrs. Cooper, my kindergarten teacher. It was during this time period as a kindergartner where I learned the beauty of, of an adult reading books to you. And through that experience, or when her son would come and read books to the class, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever to have a big person come to read books to you. And so that inspired me at a young age, at 5 years old, that I wanted to come back and read books to classes. And here I am, you know, in my 40s, and I've been doing this activity since I was 6 and 7 years old, going back to classes and reading books to kids. And nothing gives me more pleasure and enjoyment than that experience. Also, Mrs. Harris, my third grade teacher, who introduced me and the rest of the students to Judy Blume's series on Fudge, the Fudge book series. And I go back and I read these same books. I introduce the character Fudge and Judy Blume's books to elementary school students. And I just remember Mrs. Harris reading to us Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing and just really being focused on the story, laughing and all the energy and the emotion that it would get out of me. And so I think of those experiences. I think of my seventh grade science teacher, you know, Coach Green. And I was in reading classes throughout elementary. I just let you all know that. But when I got into junior high school, for some reason, I got into gifted and talented. I thought it was a mistake, to be honest with you. But I knew that I was really good in science and also in math. But I got into GT, and then Mrs. Green, Coach Green, was my science teacher. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Um, I behaved oftentimes as any 13-year-old kid would, and I just remember getting out of the seventh grade, and I was actually supposed to have gone to summer school that summer, but I did not go. And they told me in this letter that had I not gone to summer school, I'm going to be put back in seventh grade science. But it was one of those things that I just didn't really care about school really at the time. And so I remember going back to school, eighth grade, and Mrs. Green was there. I waved at her, Coach Green, and I got my schedule because you would get your schedule on the first day of school. I got my schedule and I saw that I had all gifted and talented classes, including science. And I remember walking up to Mrs. Green, Coach Green, and asking her, Coach Green, why did you put me in GT science? She looked at me and she said, because I know you can do it. And it was that moment I realized that there are teachers who believe in me. So when we're out here, we're talking about these teachers, and the impact that they have on young people's lives. I'm gonna tell you right now, had I not experienced that, I don't know if I would have become the writer I could have been. I don't know if I would have even went to college. But to know that a teacher believed in me, it meant the world to me. You know, I had other individuals. Shout out to Principal, Vice Principal Coach Green, Mrs. Principal Borkin out there who used to be the principal at Mapleville Junior High School. Mrs. Hastings, the teacher that I used to butt heads with all the time, but it was my writing ability and how I would write my essays and my reports that brought us together because we had some common interests and we had a lot of interesting debates as well too. But she was the one who kind of reminded me that I had some talent in writing, and you know, despite some time that she and I would butt heads, she was one of those teachers that just taught me to really to believe in my craft and my talent. To be honest with you, and you know, shout out to Mrs. Johnson, my ninth grade teacher, who introduced to the class The Friends by Rosa Guy. That book there, as a ninth grade student, 15 years old, I was falling out of love with reading. And it was when Mrs. Johnson, when she would read this book to us, she read this story to us, that I realized that, wow, this is a story that resonates with me in my life. And I can actually tell stories that connect with readers who look like me and who look like my mom and come from humble beginnings the same way I had. And so when I read that book and just fell in love with it, I ended up reading other Rosa Guy books. I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to write. I want to tell stories in some way, some form. And so, I just know education is a hot topic, and so I just wanted to have an opportunity to really just share my experiences and really just shout out the teachers out there who are creating beautiful people every day, beautiful individuals who are going to go on and do some great things. And I know it's because of you and parenting, of course, too. And you all were sometimes like our first mentors. You were the first people who believed in us, who told us that, yes, you know what, you can. And I know that there were some bad teachers out there. Those, for whatever reason, had dirty hearts. And I just pray that they're okay to this day. Never wish anything bad on them. But for the most part, there were a lot of incredible teachers. And so I just want to just shout out education, those teachers, and those today who are still in the thick of things, who are still underpaid, underappreciated. Just wanted to say that I myself, and I know so many others, Brandon D. Campbell and so many other people, we love you. Thank you so much for your service.